The 12th chapter, Destiny and Destination. We both opened our eyes, then bumped our heads together with a crack in our eagerness to lean over and see where we were to go. The atlas lay open at a map called Chart of the South Atlantic Ocean. My pencil point was resting right in the center of a tiny island. The name of it was printed so small that the doctor had to get out his strong spectacles to read it. I was trembling with excitement. Spider Monkey Island, he read out slowly. Then he whistled softly beneath his breath. Of all the extraordinary things, you've hit upon the very island where Long Arrow was last seen on Earth. I wonder. Well, well, how very singular. We'll go there, Doctor, won't we? I asked. Of course we will. The rules of the game say we've got to. I'm so glad it wasn't Oxenthorpe or Bristol, I said. It'll be a grand voyage, this. Look at all the sea we've got to cross. How long will it take us? Oh, no, said the doctor. Not very. With a good boat and a good wind, we should make it easily in 4 weeks. But isn't it extraordinary? Of all the places in the world, you picked out the one with your eyes shut. Spider Monkey Island, after all. Well, there's one good thing about it. I shall be able to get some jabizri beetles. What are jabizri beetles? They are a very rare kind of beetles with peculiar habits. I want to study them. There are only 3 countries in the world where they are to be found. Spider Monkey Island is one of them. But even there, they are very scarce. What is this little question mark after the name of the island for? I asked, pointing to the map. That means that the island's position in the ocean is not known very exactly, that it is somewhere about there. Ships have probably seen it in that neighborhood. That is all, most likely. It is quite possible we shall be the first white men to land there, but I dare say we shall have some difficulty in finding it first. How like a dream it all sounded. The 2 of us sitting there at the big study table, the candles lit, the smoke curling towards the dim ceiling from the doctor's pipe, the 2 of us sitting there, talking about finding an island in the ocean and being the first white men to land upon it. I'll bet it will be a great voyage, I said. It looks a lovely island on the map. Will there be black men there? No, a peculiar tribe of red Indians live on it, Miranda tells me. At this point, the poor bird of paradise stirred and woke up. In our excitement, we had forgotten to speak low. We are going to Spider Monkey Island, Miranda, said the doctor. You know where it is, do you not? I know where it was the last time I saw it, said the bird. But whether it will still be there, I can't say. What do you mean? Asked the doctor. It is always in the same place, surely. Not by any means, said Miranda. Why, didn't you know Spider Monkey is a floating island? It moves all around, all over the place, usually somewhere near southern South America. But of course, I could surely find it for you if you wanted to go there. At this fresh piece of news, I could contain myself no longer. I was bursting to tell someone. I ran dancing and singing from the room to find Chi-Chi. At the door, I tripped over Dab-Dab, who was just coming in with her wings full of plates and fell headlong on my nose. Has the boy gone crazy? Cried the duck. Where do you think you're going, ninny? To Spider Monkey Island, I shouted, picking myself up and doing cartwheels down the hall. Spider Monkey Island, hooray! And it's a floating island. You're going to Bedlam, I should say, snorted the housekeeper. Look what you've done to my best china. But I was far too happy to listen to her scolding. and I ran on, singing, into the kitchen to find Chi-Chi. Part 3. The first chapter. The Third Man. That same week, we began our preparations for the voyage. Joe, the muscle man, had the curlew moved down the river and tied it up along the river wall so it would be more handy for loading. And for 3 whole days we carried provisions down to our beautiful new boat and stowed them away. I was surprised to find how roomy and big she was inside. There were 3 little cabins, a saloon or dining room, and underneath all this, a big place called the hold, where the food and extra sails and other things were kept. I think Joe must have told everybody in the town about our coming voyage, because there was always a regular crowd watching us when we brought the things down to put aboard. And of course, sooner or later, old Matthew Mugg was bound to turn up. "My goodness, Tommy," said he as he watched me carrying on some sacks of flour, "but that's a pretty boat. Where might the doctor be going to this voyage?" "We're going to Spider Monkey Island," I said proudly. "And are you the only one the doctor's taken along?" "Well, he has spoken of wanting to take another man," I said, "but so far he hasn't made up his mind." Matthew grunted, then squinted up at the graceful mass of the curlew. "You know, Tommy," said he, "if it wasn't for my rheumatism, I've half a mind to come with the doctor myself. There's something about a boat standing ready to sail that always did make me feel venturesome and travelish-like. What's that stuff in the cans you're taking on?" "This is treacle," I said. 20 pounds of treacle." "My goodness." He sighed, turning away sadly. "That makes me feel more like going with you than ever. But my rheumatism is that bad I can't hardly—" I didn't hear any more, for Matthew had moved off, still mumbling, into the crowd that stood about the wharf. The clock in Puddleby Church struck noon, and I turned back, feeling very busy and important to the task of loading. But it wasn't very long before someone else came along and interrupted my work. This was a huge, big, burly man with a red beard and tattoo marks all over his arms. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hands, spat twice onto the river wall, and said, "Boy, where's the skipper?" "The skipper? Who do you mean?" I asked. "The captain. Where's the captain of this craft?" he said, pointing to the curlew. "Oh, you mean the doctor?" said I. "Well, he isn't here at present." At that moment, the doctor arrived with his arms full of notebooks and butterfly nets and glass cases and other natural history things. The big man went up to him, respectfully touching his cap. "Good morning, Captain," said he. "I heard you was in need of hands for a voyage. My name's Ben Butcher, able seaman." "I'm very glad to know you," said the doctor, "but I'm afraid I shan't be able to take on any more crew." "Why, but Captain," said the able seaman, "you surely ain't going to face deep sea weather with nothing more than this bit of a lad to help you, and with a cutter that big." The doctor assured him that he was, but the man didn't go away. He hung around and argued. He told us he had known of many ships being sunk through undermanning. He got out what he called his stiff kit, a paper which said what a good sailor he was, and implored us, if we valued our lives, to take him. But the doctor was quite firm, polite but determined, and finally the man walked sorrowfully away, telling us he never expected to see us alive again. Callers of one sort and another kept us quite busy that morning. The doctor had no sooner gone below to stow away his notebook close, then another visitor appeared upon the gangplank. This was a most extraordinary-looking black man. The only other Negroes I had seen had been in circuses, where they wore feathers and bone necklaces and things like that. But this one was dressed in a fashionable frock coat with an enormous bright red cravat. On his head was a straw hat with a gay band, and over this he held a large green umbrella. He was very smart in every respect except his feet. He wore no shoes or socks. "Pardon me," said he, bowing elegantly. "What is this, the ship of the physician Dolittle?" "Yes," I said. "Did you wish to see him?" "I did, if it will not be discommodious," he answered. "Who shall I say it is?" "I am Bumpo Kabobo, Crown Prince of Jolliginki." I ran downstairs at once and told the doctor. "How fortunate!" cried John Dolittle. "My old friend Bumpo. Well, well, he's studying at Oxford, you know. How good of him to come all this way to call on me." And he tumbled up the ladder to greet his visitor. The strange black man seemed to be overcome with joy when the doctor appeared and shook him warmly by the hand. "News reached me," he said, "that you were about to sail upon a voyage. I hastened to see you before your departure. I am sublimely ecstasied that I did not miss you." "You very nearly did miss us," said the doctor. "As it happened, we were delayed somewhat in getting the necessary number of men to sail our boat. If it hadn't been for that, we would have been gone 3 days ago." "How many men does your ship's company yet require?" asked Bumpo. "Only one," said the doctor, "but it is so hard to find the right one." "Methinks I detect something of the finger of destination in this," said Bumpo. "How would I do?" "Splendidly," said the doctor. "But what about your studies? You can't very well just go off and leave your university career to take care of itself, you know." "I need a holiday," said Bumpo. "Even had I not gone with you, I intended at the end of this term to take a 3 months' absconsion. But besides, I shall not be neglecting my edification if I accompany you. Before I left Jolliginki, my august father, the king, told me to be sure and travel plenty. You are a man of great studiosity. To see the world in your company is an opportunity not to be sneezed upon. No, no, indeed." "How did you like the life at Oxford?" asked the doctor. "Oh, passably, passably," said Bumpo. "I liked it all except the algebra and the shoes. The algebra hurt my head, and the shoes hurt my feet. I threw the shoes over a wall as soon as I got out of the college quadrilateral this morning, and the algebra I am happily forgetting very fast. I like Cicero. Yes, I think Cicero's fine. So simultaneous. By the way, they tell me his son is rowing for our college next year. Charming fellow." The doctor looked down at the black man's huge bare feet thoughtfully a moment. "Well," he said slowly, "there is something in what you say, Bumpo, about getting education from the world as well as from the college. And if you are really sure that you want to come, we shall be delighted to have you. Because, to tell you the truth, I think you are exactly the man we need." The second chapter. Goodbye. 2 days after that, we had all in readiness for our departure. On this voyage, Jip begged so hard to be taken that the doctor finally gave in and said he could come. Polynesia and Chi-Chi were the only other animals to go with us. Dab-Dab was left in charge of the house and the animal family we were to leave behind. Of course, As is always the way, at the last moment we kept remembering things we had forgotten, and when we finally closed the house up and went down the steps to the road, we were all burdened with armfuls of odd packages. Halfway to the river, the doctor suddenly remembered that he had left the stock pot boiling on the kitchen fire. However, we saw a blackbird flying by who nested in our garden, and the doctor asked her to go back for us and tell Dab Dab about it. Down at the river wall, we found a great crowd waiting to see us off. Standing right near the gangplank were my mother and father. I hoped that they would not make a scene or burst into tears or anything like that, but as a matter of fact, they behaved quite well for parents. My mother said something about being sure not to get my feet wet, and my father just smiled a crooked sort of smile, patted me on the back, and wished me luck. Goodbyes are awfully uncomfortable things, and I was glad when it was over and we passed on to the ship. We were a little surprised not to see Matthew Mugg among the crowd. We had felt sure that he would be there, and the doctor had intended to give him some extra instructions about the food for the animals we had left at the house. At last, after much pulling and tugging, we got the anchor up and undid a lot of mooring ropes. Then the Curlew began to move gently down the river with the outrunning tide, while the people on the wall cheered and waved with their handkerchiefs. We bumped into one or two other boats getting out into the stream, and at one sharp bend in the river, we got stuck on a mudbank for a few minutes. But though the people on the shore seemed to get very excited at these things, the doctor did not appear to be disturbed by them in the least. These little accidents will happen in the most carefully regulated voyages, he said as he leaned over the side and fished for his boots, which had got stuck in the mud while we were pushing off. Sailing is much easier when you get out into the open sea. There aren't so many silly things to bump into. For me, indeed, it was a great and wonderful feeling, that getting out into the open sea, when at length we passed the little lighthouse at the mouth of the river and found ourselves free of the land. It was all so new and different, just the sky above you and the sea below. This ship, which was to be our house and our street, our home and our garden for so many days to come, seemed so tiny in all this wide water, so tiny and yet so snug, sufficient, and safe. I looked around me and took in a deep breath. The doctor was at the wheel steering the boat, which was now leaping and plunging gently through the waves. I had expected to feel seasick at first, but was delighted to find that I didn't. Bumpo had been told off to go downstairs and prepare dinner for us. Chi-Chi was coiling up ropes in the stern and laying them in neat piles. My work was fastening down the things on the deck so that nothing could roll about if the weather should grow rough when we got further from the land. Jip was up in the peak of the boat, with ears cocked and nose stuck out, like a statue, so still, his keen old eyes keeping a sharp lookout for floating wrecks, sandbars, and other dangers. Each one of us had some special job to do, part of the proper running of a ship. Even old Polynesia was taking the sea's temperature with the doctor's bath thermometer tied on the end of a string to make sure there were no icebergs near us. As I listened to her swearing softly to herself because she couldn't read the pesky figures in the fading light, I realized that the voyage had begun in earnest and that very soon it would be night, my first night at sea. The third chapter, our troubles begin. Just before supper time, Bumpo appeared from downstairs and went to the doctor at the wheel. "A stowaway in the hold, sir," said he in a very businesslike, seafaring voice. "I just discovered him behind the flower bags." "Dear me," said the doctor. What a nuisance! Stubbins, go down with Bumpo and bring the man up. I can't leave the wheel just now. So Bumpo and I went down into the hold, and there, behind the flour bags, plastered in flour from head to foot, we found a man. After we had swept most of the flour off him with a broom, we discovered that it was Matthew Mugg. We hauled him upstairs sneezing and took him before the doctor. Why, Matthew, said John Dolittle, what on earth are you doing here? The temptation was too much for me, Doctor, said the cat's meat man. You know, I've often asked you to take me on voyages with you, and you never would. Well, this time, knowing that you needed an extra man, I thought if I stayed here till the ship was well at sea, you would find I came in handy like and keep me. But I had to lie so doubled up for hours behind them flour bags that my rheumatism came on something awful. I just had to change my position. And of course, just as I stretched out my legs, along comes this here African cook of yours and sees my feet sticking out. Don't this ship roll something awful? How long has this storm been going on? I reckon this damp sea air wouldn't be very good for my rheumatics. No, Matthew, it really isn't. You ought not to have come. You are not in any way suited to this kind of a life. I'm sure you wouldn't enjoy a long voyage a bit. We'll stop in at Penzance and put you ashore. Bumpo, please go downstairs to my bunk and listen. In the pocket of my dressing gown, you'll find some maps. Bring me the small one with blue pencil marks on at the top. I know Penzance is over here on the left somewhere, but I must find out what lighthouses there are before I change the ship's course and sail inshore. Very good, sir, said Bumpo, turning round smartly and making for the stairway. Now, Matthew, said the doctor, you can take the coach from Penzance to Bristol, and from there it is not very far to Puddleby, as you know. Don't forget to take the usual provisions to the house every Thursday, and be particularly careful to remember the extra supply of herrings for the baby minks. While we were waiting for the maps, Chi-Chi and I set about lighting the lamps, a green one on the right side of the ship, a red one on the left, and a white one on the mast. At last we heard someone trundling on the stairs again, and the doctor said, Ah, here's Bumpo with the maps at last. But to our great astonishment, it was not Bumpo alone that appeared, but 3 people. Good Lord, deliver us! Who are these? Cried John Dolittle. 2 more stowaways, sir, said Bumpo, stepping forward briskly. I found them in your cabin, hiding under the bunk. 1 woman and 1 man, sir. Here are the maps. This is too much, said the doctor feebly. Who are they? I can't see their faces in this dim light. Strike a match, Bumpo. You could never guess who it was. It was Luke and his wife. Mrs. Luke appeared to be very miserable and seasick. They explained to the doctor that after they had settled down to live together in the little shack out on the Fens, so many people came to visit them, having heard about the great trial, that life became impossible, and they had decided to escape from Puddleby in this manner, for they had no money to leave any other way, and try to find some new place to live where they and their story wouldn't be so well known. But as soon as the ship had begun to roll, Mrs. Luke had got most dreadfully unwell. Poor Luke apologized many times for being such a nuisance, and said that the whole thing had been his wife's idea. The doctor, after he had sent below for his medicine bag, and had given Mrs. Luke some sal volatile and smelling salts, said he thought the best thing to do would be for him to lend them some money and put them ashore at Penzance with Matthew. He also wrote a letter for Luke to take with him to a friend the doctor had in the town of Penzance, who, it was hoped, would be able to find Luke work to do there. As the doctor opened his purse and took out some gold coins, I heard Polynesia, who was sitting on my shoulder, watching the whole affair, mutter beneath her breath. "There he goes, lending his last blessed penny. £3.10, all the money we had for the whole trip. Now we haven't the price of a postage stamp aboard if we should lose an anchor, or have to buy a pint of tar. Well, let's pray we don't run out of food. Why doesn't he give them the ship and walk home?" Presently, with the help of the map, the course of the boat was changed, and, to Mrs. Luke's great relief, we made for Penzance and dry land. I was tremendously interested to see how a ship could be steered into a port at night with nothing but lighthouses and a compass to guide you. It seemed to me that the doctor missed all the rocks and sandbars very cleverly. We got into that funny little Cornish harbor about 11 o'clock that night. The doctor took his stowaways on shore in our small rowboat, which we kept on the deck of the Curlew, and found them rooms at the hotel there. When he got back, he told us that Mrs. Luke had gone straight to bed and was feeling much better. It was now after midnight, so we decided to stay in the harbor and wait till morning before setting out again. I was glad to get to bed, although I felt that staying up so tremendously late was great fun. As I climbed into the bunk over the doctor's and pulled the blankets snugly round me, I found I could look out of the porthole at my elbow, and without raising my head from the pillow, could see the lights of Penzance swinging gently up and down with the motion of the ship at anchor. It was like being rocked to sleep, with a little show going on to amuse you. I was just deciding that I liked the life of the sea very much when I fell fast asleep. The fourth chapter. Our troubles continue. The next morning, when we were eating a very excellent breakfast of kidneys and bacon, prepared by our good cook Bumpo, the doctor said to me, "I was just wondering, Stubbins, whether I should stop at the Capablanca Islands or run right across for the coast of Brazil. Miranda said we could expect a spell of excellent weather now for 4.5 weeks at least." "Well," I said, spooning out the sugar at the bottom of my cocoa cup, "I should think it would be best to make straight across while we are sure of good weather. And besides, the purple bird of paradise is going to keep a lookout for us, isn't she? She'll be wondering what's happened to us if we don't get there in about a month." "True, quite true, Stubbins. On the other hand, the Capablancas make a very convenient stopping place on our way across. If we should need supplies or repairs, it would be very handy to put in there." "How long will it take us from here to the Capablancas?" I asked. "About 6 days," said the doctor. "Well, we can decide later. For the next 2 days, at any rate, our direction would be the same practically in either case. If you have finished your breakfast, let's go and get under way." Upstairs, I found our vessel surrounded by white and gray seagulls, who flashed and circled about in the sunny morning air, looking for food scraps thrown out by the ships into the harbor. By about 7:30, we had the anchor up and the sails set to a nice steady breeze. And this time we got out into the open sea without bumping into a single thing. We met the Penzance fishing fleet coming in from the night's fishing, and very trim and neat they looked, in a line like soldiers, with their red-brown sails all leaning over the same way, and the white water dancing before their bows. For the next 3 or 4 days, everything went smoothly and nothing unusual happened. During this time, we all got settled down into our regular jobs, and in spare moments, the doctor showed each of us how to take our turns at the wheel, the proper manner of keeping a ship on her right course, and what to do if the wind changed suddenly. We divided the 24 hours of the day into 3 spells, and we took it in turns to sleep our 8 hours and be awake 16. So the ship was well looked after, with 2 of us always on duty. Besides that, Polynesia, who was an older sailor than any of us, and really knew a lot about running ships, seemed to be always awake, except when she took her couple of winks in the sun, standing on one leg beside the wheel. You may be sure that no one ever got a chance to stay abed more than his 8 hours while Polynesia was around. She used to watch the ship's clock, and if you overslept a half minute, she would come down to the cabin and peck you gently on the nose till you got up. I very soon grew to be quite fond of our funny black friend Bumpo, with his grand way of speaking and his enormous feet, which someone was always stepping on or falling over. Although he was much older than I was and had been to college, he never tried to lord it over me. He seemed to be forever smiling and kept all of us in good humor. It wasn't long before I began to see the doctor's good sense in bringing him, in spite of the fact that he knew nothing whatsoever about sailing or travel. On the morning of the 5th day out, just as I was taking the wheel over from the doctor, Bumpo appeared and said, "The salt beef is nearly all gone, sir." "The salt beef?" cried the doctor. "Why, we brought 120 pounds with us. We couldn't have eaten that in 5 days. What can have become of it?" "I don't know, sir. I'm sure every time I go down to the stores, I find another hunk missing. If it is rats that are eating it, then they are certainly colossal rodents." Polynesia, who was walking up and down a stay rope, taking her morning exercise, put in, "We must search the hold. If this is allowed to go on, we will all be starving before a week is out. Come downstairs with me, Tommy, and we will look into this matter." So we went downstairs into the storeroom, and Polynesia told us to keep quite still and listen. This we did, and presently we heard from a dark corner of the hold the distinct sound of someone snoring. "Ah, I thought so," said Polynesia. "It's a man, and a big one. Climb in there, both of you, and haul him out. It sounds as though he were behind that barrel. Gosh, we seem to have brought half of Puddleby with us. Anyone would think we were a penny ferry boat. Such cheek! Haul him out." So Bumpo and I lit a lantern and climbed over the stores, and there, behind the barrel, sure enough, we found an enormous bearded man fast asleep, with a well-fed look on his face. We woke him up. "What's the matter?" he said sleepily. It was Ben Butcher, the able seaman. Polynesia spluttered like an angry firecracker. "This is the last straw," said she. "This one man in the world we least wanted. Shiver my timbers, what cheek!" "Would it not be advisable," suggested Bumpo, "while the varlet is still sleepy, to strike him on the head with some heavy object and push him through a porthole into the sea?" "No, we'd get into trouble," said Polynesia. "We're not in Jolliginki now, you know. Worse luck. Besides, there never was a porthole big enough to push that man through. Bring him upstairs to the doctor." So we led the man to the wheel, where he respectfully touched his cap to the doctor. "Another stowaway, sir," said Bumpo smartly. I thought the poor doctor would have a fit. "Good morning, Captain," said the man. "Ben Butcher, able seaman, at your service. I know you'd need me, so I took the liberty of stowing away, much against my conscience. But I just couldn't bear to see your poor landsmen set out on this voyage without a single real seaman to help you. You'd never have got home alive if I hadn't come. Why, look at your mainsail, sir, all loose at the throat. First gust of wind come along, and away goes your canvas overboard. Well, it's all right now. I'm here. We'll soon get things in ship shape. No, it isn't all right, said the doctor. It's all wrong, and I'm not at all glad to see you. I told you in Puddleby I didn't want you. You had no right to come. But, Captain, said the able seaman, you can't sail the ship without me. You don't understand navigation. Why, look at the compass now. You have let her swing a point and a half off her course. It's madness for you to try to do this trip alone. If you pardon my saying so, sir, why, you'll lose the ship. Look here, said the doctor, a sudden stern look coming into his eyes. Losing a ship is nothing to me. I've lost ships before, and it doesn't bother me in the least. When I set out to go to a place, I get there. Do you understand? I may know nothing whatever about sailing and navigation, but I get there just the same. Now, you may be the best seaman in the world, but on this ship you're just a plain ordinary nuisance. Very plain and very ordinary. And I am now going to call at the nearest port and put you ashore. Yes, and think yourself lucky, Polynesia put in, that you're not locked up for stowing away and eating all our salt beef. I don't know what the mischief we're going to do now, I heard her whisper to Bumpo. We've no money to buy any more, and that salt beef was the most important part of the stores. Would it not be good political economy, Bumpo whispered back, if we salted the able seaman and ate him instead? I should judge that he would weigh more than 120 pounds. How often must I tell you that we are not in Jolliginki? Snapped Polynesia. Those things are not done on white men's ships. Still, she murmured after a moment's thought, it's an awfully bright idea. I don't suppose anybody saw him come on the ship. Oh, but heavens, we haven't got enough salt. Besides, he'd be sure to taste of tobacco.